and welcome to the Wellness with Juanita podcast. I'm your host, Juanita Nagai, an American living in Japan for 20 years. I've gone through some massive life changes and crises in my 20 years here. At its bleakest, I felt very isolated, alone, and helpless in the face of what was happening. I relied on alcohol and cigarettes to get through it the best I knew how, which worked until it didn't, and everything fell apart. I made it through with a little help from my friends, a fledgling mindfulness practice, and learning how to become my own strongest ally. I quit drinking and smoking, worked my way through my grief, found ways to forgive, created new connections, and started a regular exercise, meditation, and self-care routine. I've also become a national board certified health and wellness coach along the way, and developed a desire and passion to help others on their own personal journeys. This podcast is all about change, growth, healing yourself, learning how to get back up after life kicks you down, and exploring mindfulness and self-compassion as incredible tools available to each and every one of us to do just that. Hello, and welcome to the Wellness with Juanita podcast. I'm your host, Juanita Nagai, and today I am joined again by a very special and lovely guest. Gretchen Miura is a mindfulness meditation teacher, a grief care facilitator, and a very dear friend. She also lives here in Japan in the northern region up in Akita Prefecture. And so I'm very excited to welcome you today, Gretchen. Thank you so much for being on my podcast again.
Oh, thank you, Anita. You know, I'm so happy and honored to be here with you.
Yes, I really appreciate it. And I reached out because, as you are aware, this is a kind of tender and difficult and bittersweet time of year for me. November and December is when lots of my painful moments and suffering and loss occurred, and I've been holding it gently and keeping it kind of, it's never, far from the front of my mind, but a few years has passed. And so it's been interesting to see how that feels, carrying it into this kind of season of year. So grief has been on my mind. And I know you will agree that we don't talk about grief nearly as much as we probably should or would be helpful in general company or general society. So I just wanted to invite you into this conversation to talk about grief in general and how you are doing as well going into this time of the year, coming into the holidays, and having experienced, very tender losses yourself recently and in the long ago past.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said. The word tender and holding it gently and the bittersweet feelings around grief and the holidays. And I feel like because we know each other's stories, I know that, you lost your mom at this time of year. So that's particularly hard, I would assume. Again, I didn't experience that, but then there's all the love and joy you felt with your mom around the holidays. So it's this mixed bag. And for people who have lost family members or friends or community members, holidays do bring up a lot of extra emotion because those are times we share special times with one another. So it can feel particularly lonely, or we might be missing our person more than usual. Or if you had a complicated relationship, which many of us do have, particularly with family members, those issues resurface because we may not have been able to work through them. So again, grief is so multi-layered, it's complex. And as you said, we often don't feel like we can talk about it with people. So then we carry it ourselves or feel extra isolated. But I love what you said, that you're being extra tender with your grief and gentle with your grief.
Yes, as you mentioned, I did lose my mom at the beginning of December, and Christmas was the mom holiday. She loved it and she made such magical moments for us every year growing up. And so it's that combination of course, missing her and feeling her presence so
Mm.
much during this season when I, recreate some of the merrymaking that she used to do for me and my childhood with my own kids, even decorating the Christmas tree. There's so many homemade ornaments that were from mom and little notes and things. So it's that happiness and that love and the feeling the holiday spirit, but also of course missing her and then kind of being reminded of her even more than usual, if that makes sense. There's that tenderness and that holding. That's what it really feels like to me, kind of holding it in the circle of compassion that I have been building and developing over the years. And then the other loss was of my second pregnancy in mid-November. And this year actually was the first year that I wasn't able to go to the local shrine to pray because my son that I had after this loss was really, really sick with the flu. But of course, that second baby, Jinta, was very much on my mind, and I was thinking of him throughout the day, and we gave him flowers and put them in the altar space that we have created for him in my room. So again, it's kind of this tenderness and this holding and carrying it forward. Like, this is what life is now. I still am
Mm.
thinking of him. I'm still participating in the rituals and moments that help me grieve and mourn him even now, years later. But, I couldn't go to the temple because I was home with my sick little boy that needs me right in the here and
Mm.
now. So yeah, it's another loss and another kind of mixed bag of emotions.
Oh, it is so beautiful, though. Like you said, this is what life is. Like, I'm living this life, and I have this little boy at home who has the flu, and I need to take care of him. And then you're still carrying this grief. But it's so beautiful to hear those stories. I mean, it's just really tender, that sort of juxtaposition between these two boys and how they sort of illuminate this beautiful love you have as a mother, the sorrow of losing, and then the tenderness of taking care of a boy right now. See, I think even just sharing these stories are just so moving. We just, again, like, we don't have so much space to talk about these things with people so openly, knowing that the other person could receive a story like that. But we all carry loss. We all carry grief. I mean, you really just scratch the surface, and everybody has some loss or grief in their life. We all carry some of these emotions around grief and loss. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I appreciate so much about you and the work that you do and the spaces that you open up for sharing those stories and talking about grief in general, because it is still kind of so taboo, but just getting more comfortable with being open or being vulnerable and brave enough to share,
Mhm.
this is my experience and this is what has happened, and this is how I'm carrying it forward and how
Mhm.
I'm still processing it many years later. I
Mhm.
think that oftentimes when people lose someone, it's really hard to talk about or know what to say or ask about in the kind of near aftermath. But
Yeah.
as the years go on, as time goes on, it's still very much always present. So
Mhm.
maybe like the holidays, right? Or the anniversary of their death or their birthday, these kind of milestones and moments that we're always thinking about, but people don't know how to bring up and don't know how to talk about, I think, even with their closest friends
Mhm.
sometimes.
I was gonna ask, do you find it easier though to bring it up now? You're sort of saying it maybe doesn't feel easier, but do you feel a little bit easier to bring it up in conversation?
I guess it depends so much on context and
Yeah.
on the people.
Mm,
This is my podcast, so I take free reign to talk about whatever I want to talk about. But my best friend, my
mm,
closest friends, if they mention, for example, Jinta's birthday, if they remember, and just kind of acknowledge it, then I do feel like I can share, like, this is what we did this year, or here's a picture of the flowers that we put up in his altar, or something like that. It's just such a small kindness, but it really is something I take to heart, that
yeah.
people ask about it and acknowledge it. Yeah. How
Mm-hmm.
about for you? I was wondering, like, I know that you lost your mom in the summer,
Mm-hmm.
and you shared some of the kind of things that you did as you were grieving her. I know visiting the ocean and some of the mandala art and things. I wonder if you'd be willing to share about some of the ways that you processed that tender period for you.
Yeah, I did lose my mom in early July. And I was lucky because I did have a lot of sort of space to grieve her at that time. I was back in America. And as you mentioned, we both live in Japan. So being back in America in a way sort of allowed me to really be with my feelings at the time. So when I was in America, I actually did spend a lot of time in nature or with my sisters or spend time with people who knew my mom and I could talk to her. And then when I came back to Japan, it was sort of startling because people don't know my mom here, you know, and I realized how nice it was just to be in a community where people knew her and were sharing stories. My husband and some people, actually, my mom had come to Japan and visited, so some people did know her, but you're in a completely different community. And so I did create more rituals for myself, and I have found that to be so helpful. And so, one ritual that I have shared before, but I'll share again now, is that every day for about a month, I would go to the beach and pick up shells or sea glass. And just during that 10, 20, 30 minutes of walking on the beach and picking them up, sometimes like an hour, I don't know, I would lose track of time. I would just be thinking of my mom. There's just nothing really too heavy about it. Just thinking about her or just enjoying the air or sun or whatever. But it was sort of intentional time. Just, I'm going to pick up sea glass. I'm going to pick up seashells for my mom. And then at sort of the end of this month, and I chose to sort of do it on, I think it was the 2-month anniversary of her death. I made a mandala, and a mandala is just basically a big geometric circle. And they're found in many different cultures. I first visually saw one with Tibetan mandalas, but they're in many different cultures. And they're even seen in nature, flowers and petals and the
Right.
cosmos and the universe. So it's just
Yeah.
very universal symbol of, you know, sort of almost that feeling of like there's no beginning and no end, a sense of wholeness, a sense of unity with the cosmos, and just the mystery of death. We just don't know what it is. We can't really wrap our heads around it. And I've
Mhm.
started to realize I love this idea of like mystery. I don't know what death is. How can we possibly understand the unknowable, but just to stay open to it and to allow the real sorrow of the physical death of somebody we love. That's a real sorrow. They're not physically in our lives anymore. And just to allow all of it, right? Just allow it. And so then I made this mandala, and I spent a whole day making it. I mean, I was there all day, because I had collected just so many shells and glass.
Right.
Um, and it was quite huge, actually. It was quite a big project. And it was actually quite spiritual for me, if I'm honest. Like, it really was intense. And my husband came over in the afternoon, and I just was sort of in my own headspace, but it was nice having him witness it in a way. And I would sort of go swimming and then come back and work on the mandala. And then I stayed for like the sunset. I invited my children to come see the mandala. And then we
Mm.
went out to Indian curry, and it's, yeah, but I really wanted, it's so private, but then I also wanted to be witnessed and to have other people be part of it because they had seen that I had been collecting the shells all summer. And I had made mandalas before. I had made one for my brother as well, who died when I was very young. So they were already sort of aware that I was doing these mandalas. And now I do, this was the third year that I made a mandala for my mom this summer. So now it's just becoming this annual ritual that my family knows. And the other important part is that I leave it there to be washed away with the waves. And that's a really important part for me, is that letting go. I remember feeling when I went home that night, the first year that I made it, just again, this mixture sort of terror, because I was sort of thinking of like the ocean at night and waves and imagining a high tide and the depth of the ocean and the unknown, but then also the calm of the waves and just knowing that everything's connected. And again, just allowing yourself to feel all of those emotions and not having to compartmentalize them or even understand them. I feel like for me, that's so much about grief, is like, this is what I'm feeling, allowing what I'm feeling, opening yourself up to this, because there's just this expansiveness. I think you and I have talked about this, but when we allow ourselves to be with the sorrow and the sadness, we're also allowing ourselves to be with the tremendous love and joy. And I think people are understanding that more, that they're two sides of the same coin. So if we cut ourselves off from feeling that sadness or sorrow, we also are sort of cutting ourselves off from that depth of love and joy and connection. And so really just opening myself up to that, even just imagining the waves coming in that night. It was quite intense. It was almost like the most intense part of the whole process. And I went back the next day, and actually a lot of the mandala was still there, but a lot of the shells had washed away and were scattered. And it's just this very organic experience. And that's just what I did. But I started to realize how important routine. I'm not a routine person. I'm not a consistent person. I say that like normally I feel like, oh, I hate routine. I don't like to have some mundane approach to life, but just that sense of regularly acknowledging things, or using art, or using nature, or using the sunset, just sort of these ritualized, very small, like the mandala is a big project, how helpful it is when you're grieving, right? Like I love that sense of going to the shrine once a year. Like that seems so beautiful to me, and so integrating this very real loss into how you carry it forward, how you raise your children. Like that's just a fluid motion of, I'm still raising children and I'm still grieving a child.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that intentionality, I think, is what we bring into the rituals and the kind of celebration, whether it's a bigger one like the mandala. And I love that story. That is so amazing and so beautiful. You intentionally recognized a need to create this, like to gather this, to give yourself that space every day to collect the shells and just let your mind kind of be open and think of your mom in whatever ways came up. Not like,
Yeah.
this is me grieving, this is what I have to do,
Right.
but just here is this space. That's one of the things that I really took from your sharing. I know that in my experience of these two very different griefs that
Right.
I went through with the baby, because I was hospitalized and I was on bed rest for so long, I feel like I had that space. I had so much opportunity to really just feel awful, just to really lie in the bed and cry and wallow and rage and text my best friend so much that my phone was literally hot, like a lot of the time. But do all of the things that I felt like I needed to do because I had that space. It was kind of a forced space, you know. And with my mom, I don't feel like I had that for a very long time until much, much later. So, you know, the idea of getting into nature, I mean, for me, my mom also she loved getting out into the woods and hiking, and she took us on We have so many crazy hiking, forced death march stories that are like, the funny, but also, oh my goodness, I can't believe she made us walk that long when we were that small kind of stories. So now I connect with her when I go out in the woods, and I seem to inadvertently
Mhm.
always go a little bit further than I mean to. I'm just like, Mom's up there laughing, or she's knows I'm carrying on the family tradition. So it's an intentional way of
Mm.
connecting and honoring and remembering our people. And I think that that's really, it is helpful, and it's really therapeutic to be able to have something to go to, have
Mm.
somewhere to go to, even if that space is more in our hearts or in our mind. But like you
Mhm.
said, taking a walk every day is just an amazing kind of a practice. Being able to let ourselves go there might be
Mhm.
the first step in grief, maybe. Just even
Mhm.
allowing ourselves to feel whatever is coming up. That's something I wanted to ask you about today. You kind of already mentioned this, but grief is so many different things. I mean, it's something different for every person at probably various points within their even one day.
Yeah.
It's, what's the word I'm looking for? Like prolific, the level and intensity of the emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be, I think, difficult for people to allow themselves
Mm.
to maybe even kind of accept that I'm filled with rage right now. Or
Mm-hmm.
it's not just sadness, it's not just
Yeah.
sorrow.
So true.
I actually remember it was something that you posted. I don't know if it was just on your wall or as part of the grief support group that
Mm-hmm.
you co run, but I remember reading something about we have to just let ourselves feel the feels. Like we can't feel
Mm.
guilty about the way that we're feeling. This is happening. And so we need to
Mm.
just allow ourselves to feel it. And it really struck a chord with me because I realized I think I was judging. I don't know. I don't feel enough this way, or I feel too much this way,
Mm-hmm.
or nobody wants to hear me talk about it anymore, so I should be over it. Or there was a lot of kind of judging going on to the processing. But I have done enough mindfulness work, I think, in general, that I can see now the feelings come and go, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't help to judge them or to criticize ourselves or to feel any
Mm.
good or bad about the way that we're feeling, right? Like we just need to kind of open up and be part of that ocean, just the good, the bad, and the ugly, and just let it roll through us.
Mm. Well, yeah, I want to talk about all the different emotions, but I also love how you brought up a lot of times we don't feel resourced to really tend to our grief. Sometimes that's just practical. People have families and jobs and responsibilities, and I really want to be compassionate to people who are just not in a space to deal with their grief or tend to their grief. And um, yeah, it's just or it's just scary. It's like if I even lift the lid on this, I'm going to be completely overwhelmed by it. So my brother died when I was 5, and I didn't really deal with it or spend time with it till I was in my 40s. So I just want people to know that there's again no shame in being like, well, this happened a long time ago, but I don't, maybe now I can spend some time with it. Try to see how it's still living in me. So there's no time limit. There's no right way to grieve. There's no wrong way to grieve. You don't have to feel bad if you're listening to this and thinking, wait, I haven't spent time, because I felt so lucky that I was able to really grieve my mom's death. But that's after years of a meditation practice, of dealing with my brother's grief, of going to a grief therapy, of actually studying about grief. You know what I mean? Like that's like most resourced I could have been. I felt so lucky, but I had sort of really gone through a lot of ups and downs. So it's just hard. It's just hard to grieve. It's just because of what you're saying. The emotions are so intense. And a lot of people, I'm really glad you said this, like think, oh, I'm sad. No, I'm jealous. I'm angry. I'm blaming. I'm ashamed. It's just really difficult emotions come up. Really difficult emotions come up. These are the, I mean, sadness almost seems cute compared to some of these
Yeah,
emotions, right?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah. And one thing, as you've alluded to, I co-facilitate a grief support community with Sarah Furuya. And we just went through, we have these topics, but this idea of secondary losses. So we have this
Mm.
primary loss, but then there's all these ripples. So suddenly now I'm mad at my husband. And it's like, no, but they're real, it's like, or loss of identity, loss of tradition. And then there's different types of grief. So sometimes we have this disenfranchised grief where we're really ashamed of the grief, right? Or collective grief where it's like a communal grief, but we're all sort of experiencing different. So again, to your point, it's prolific. It's so many layers. So just to allow, as you said, that word, which I really love, allow a spaciousness of, okay, I'm feeling a lot of rage today, a lot of rage. That's justified. And so you and I both use mindfulness. So if anyone's listening, I think mindfulness is helpful because it's this awareness without judgment. So it's awareness without being attached. So you're not identifying with the rage as I'm a rageful person or I'm an angry person or I'm a jealous person. You're not identifying with that because that's quite destructive. Okay, I'm an angry, rageful, jealous person. Instead, okay, there's rage present. I'm feeling a sense of rage, not I'm rageful or something. So just allowing that emotion to be present without being consumed by it, without being overwhelmed by it, but also not ignoring it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bit of a cheesy phrase, but sort of in the mindfulness community, it's what you resist persists. So it's like if I just resist the sense that I have a lot of rage and a lot of anger that's rising up in me, if I really deny that, it's just going to keep coming and keep coming, but it sort of comes out in really funky, indirect ways. And then we're just really disassociated. Like, why am I acting this way? Or why am I yelling at my child? Or the myriad of ways. So just allowing, okay, there's rage present. Can I just be with this rage for 5 seconds? Can I just allow a little bit of spaciousness without judging, without identifying with it?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where the spaciousness comes in, right? That's where it's like, okay, it's here. It's not who I am. I'm not completely defined by this rage, but it is present for right now. And can I just
Yeah.
be with it? I think that's so helpful. And that's maybe why I do think, again, it doesn't have, mindfulness, you can use a different word, but just being aware of your emotions without judgment is very helpful.
Yes. Yeah. It's the extra stuff that we add on top, right? It's the second
Mm.
arrow story that you told me many, many years ago, from Buddhism, the traditional idea that the first arrow is the pain, is the
Yeah.
suffering, is the loss that we experience. And then when we judge ourselves for feeling the way that we feel about it, or we pile on all this other stuff, that's the second arrow that we're just shooting in the already really sore wound. And if
Yeah.
we could let it go and just let it kind of move through us without identifying it, as you said, I am not full of rage, or I mean, we don't even think of that when we're in that moment. We just literally get so identified with it,
Mhm.
like we are just subsumed in the really intense emotion. But as you said, like with a mindfulness practice or different kind of techniques, that we can say, okay, well, it's not me, like that is not all that I am or all that's
Right.
happening, but there is rage arising. And so it gives us that spaciousness. What I wanted to add on to what you're saying is that especially with something like rage, something like anger, is that it's also
Mm.
information. When we're dealing with grief, we don't necessarily need to or want to psychoanalyze ourselves. I mean, like you were saying, when we're not feeling resourced, it's not the time to like tackle, anything else but just basic survival, right? But when we are feeling resourced and when we are
Mm.
able to kind of say, okay, these really
Right.
intense emotions are coming up, what are they telling me? Right? If we're
Mm.
unidentified enough to be able to kind of hold them separately and say, all right, so what's going on? And for me and my self compassion practices, being
Mm.
able to also say, what do I need in this moment to deal with the rage? So, thinking of a relatively recent personal example, I was really filled with the rage and really, really aware of it and could feel it in my body. And I vented to my best friend and I
Mm.
kind of blew off a little bit of steam and was able to say, okay, I need to physically get this out of my body. So I went on a really hard uphill, incredibly fast run, way faster than I usually do. But it was just what I needed to kind of physically be able to release and also bring the intensity level down a little
Mm.
bit. But I wasn't shying away from the emotion. And I think
Mm.
in the past, I would have just completely gotten subsumed within it and just been angry and reactionary and probably still carrying
Mm.
it around with me, still stuck in all of the stories and the drama or whatever. But instead, I was able to kind of
Mm.
recognize it as providing me useful information for myself, and also was able to kind
Mm.
of process it and just dissolve it almost, right? Like just
Mm.
kind of let it go as opposed to
Mm.
letting it stick inside my head or in my shoulders or my heart.
So, well, I want to say, I think one of the meditations we both use that's so helpful is called RAIN. So it's an acronym. So R is recognize, just recognizing this is the emotion, right? This is what's going on, or this is even the story. This is the situation that's difficult. And then allow is what we've been talking about. And sometimes I'm like, can I just be with this? Can I be with this? Can I allow space for this? And we're not fixing. That's so important. It's so important. We always want to fix everything as humans. I actually think that's why we're so uncomfortable with grief, is people want to fix and make us feel better. And actually, we just need to sit with it. So the allowing is, I don't need to fix this. And for me, I don't even need to understand it right now. Can I just allow this emotion, this stuckness, this problem to be here? And then I is for investigate, which you're just sharing, is what knowledge, what wisdom, what is this emotion trying to tell me? And I always think if you can even just do the R, which is recognize, and A, which is allow, that's huge. But like you said, if you feel a little bit more resource or you have a little bit more time, then you can sort of say, what's really going on? What is this emotion trying to tell me? It has wisdom, it has knowledge, it has something to teach me. And a lot of times, particularly an emotion like anger is not the real emotion. There's a lot of hurt underneath it, or a sense of betrayal or abandonment, or a lack of worth is pretty hard to feel. So I'd rather feel angry than
Mm-hmm.
worthless, right?
Yeah.
So we sort of have to get to the real tender feelings. What's really going on? A lot of times blame is covering up sort of a more, like it was too hard to feel, so I'd rather blame somebody. All those things. So if you feel resource, you can go into the I part, which is what you were just sharing. Like, what's going on? What is this trying to teach me? And at this time, if you are going through this sort of little process, a lot of times our bodies are sort of the wisest part of ourselves, like the clenching or it's like, okay, what is my body trying to tell me? We're so disconnected from our bodies, but we hold a lot of our emotions in our body. So just sort of, okay, what's going on? And then the N is nurture, which is, can I just do something that might feel compassionate? Again, I'm not going to solve it or fix it. That's really not the point. But can I just be compassionate with myself? And sometimes that's really just as simple as, this is hard. This is heavy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or you could say, you're not alone. It could be something really practical like you did. Like maybe I just need to get all this energy out and go take a really intense, hike or something. Or I'm going to call my best friend because I know she'll listen to me. Or I'm going to make a nice cup of tea or something. So it could be a very practical, it could be even bigger. Okay, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
start doing something differently. But it could be as simple as, this is hard. This is hard. That actually is so helpful for me when I'm really, really overwhelmed by a difficult emotion. Okay, this is hard. This is hard.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
solving anything or fixing anything, but just, this is hard. So that again, it could be a 1 minute meditation of, okay, just stop and recognize what's going on. Can I allow it? Investigate what's going on underneath, and then nurture. So that's the RAIN. That's the acronym. You could do it much longer. You could weave it into your weekly practice. And there's a lot of good recordings online too for people
Yeah.
to follow. There's so much now available. So if that resonates with anybody, but it actually helps when you're really hit by an emotion, particularly in grief, where they just seem to come out of nowhere. When you're really hit and you're almost panicking, oh my gosh, just, okay, can I recognize it? Can I allow it? Do I have time to investigate? And then can I just nurture myself a little bit? Can be quite helpful.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And that's a wonderful reminder. And I guess I was practicing rain without even
Sure,
realizing it
yeah.
in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
instance. But I think that you're right when I talk about rain and teach it to other people as well. I always say that if you can do the R, if you can
Mhm.
recognize and kind of catch
Yeah,
yourself, half the battle is already won.
absolutely.
So it's very, very true. But I also really appreciated what you were saying about, for me, with the lens, I kind of see so many things these days with the mindfulness of just simply
Mhm.
recognizing and admitting that this is hard.
Mm.
Whether that's with a really intense emotion, whether that's with recognizing that grief and all of the accompanying other emotions might be present in other areas of our lives or in other circumstances and situations. So we have experienced very close personal losses, unfortunately, and are very intimate with grief and our grieving processes because of that. But I think that there's just so much in the world right now. I think we're
Mhm.
experiencing different levels of collective grief
Yeah.
and trying to process and kind of let go of even the kind of world that we thought that we lived in. I mean, so even on, and then on a personal level, I've been really processing and diving in deep
Mm.
in a lot of different areas, as I seem to do. I think once you start this process, is no putting the brakes on it, right? It's just like falling further and further down Alice's rabbit hole. But I've been recognizing that I have grief over the childhood family that I once had that I no longer have. Grief over past versions of myself. And so kind of allowing myself to go there and to try and process it, I think it was possible, and it began because I was able to mindfully look, and again, feeling relatively resourced to say at different points of my story or my history, and
Mm.
finally be able to say, that was really hard.
Mm.
Like, that really hurt.
Mm.
And it's almost like these little catalysts or little points in the story that maybe I usually just kind of gloss over, or this is just my history and it's just kind of a linear, smooth sailing. Like, it's
Mhm.
just all cool. Everything's great. And then it's like, oh, wait, no, that was really painful, or that was really difficult. Something needs attention there.
Mm,
And knowing the kind of a little bit of the language of grief, which I did learn from you and Lighthouse Circle, and the different kind of resources that you introduced to us there. It's been a
mm,
really helpful lens for me to
mm,
process and to kind of rely on as I start to gently and
mm.
slowly try to kind of uncover some of this other stuff that's coming up.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the idea of just what we're collectively going through. I mean, this is a difficult time. It just is.
Yeah.
And
It's just wild.
it's a weird time. It's a weird time. And yeah, it's a weird time. So, yeah, I'm just glad you're bringing that up. It's just a weird time, and we're all processing it different. And I mean, families are splintering over different political ideology. I mean, that's weird, right? I think going back to the two arrows, I just want to talk a little bit about that because I think that's helpful. And I think it's sort of is similar. I'm forgetting it, but I was raised Catholic. But there's that, I don't know what is the prayer. Gosh, but something like to know the difference between what I control and can't control, or know the
The
difference between,
serenity prayer. Mm.
yeah, exactly, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? What can I control and what can't I? So that would be very
Mhm.
similar. It's like two arrows. So the first arrow is, again, it doesn't have to be a death, but it's the wounding, and it
Mhm.
happened. It's
Yeah.
real. Somebody
Yeah.
died, or we're in a crisis, politically or economically. I lost my job. That happened. That is real. And you never, ever, ever have to feel ashamed to grieve that. That's hard. That's painful. That's a real loss. The second arrow
Mhm.
is our reaction that you were saying, reacting out of anger, or reacting out of blame, or othering other people, or blaming other people. So the second arrow, we have a little bit more wiggle room in controlling our response.
Mhm.
And sometimes just sort of being able to be like, you know what, this really happened. I lost my job. This is real. I'm in a panic. My finances, that's all real. And that really deserves attention. And it doesn't need to be denied or minimized, but how am I going to react right now? So that can just sort of be helpful to sort of sometimes look at the two and, because it's like sometimes we clump it together, like I have to be okay or I have to be moving
Mhm.
on. No, there's something real that happened. There's a real loss. There's a real grief, but how I deal with it. Having said all of that, I really always get a little bit nervous around mindfulness that people feel like they have to show up calm and
Mhm.
mindful. And I just want to say, you can be messy, you can be complicated, you can show up
Mhm.
just with like all your baggage. Like, we are humans. This is so hard. And
Mhm.
the only reason I meditate is because I'm a messy, complicated person. And it took me and by no means have I gotten to a place of I'm perfectly calm all the time. And so
Mm.
I always want people to know you can show up so sort of quote unquote messy, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's hard to be a human. It's hard to carry these losses. It's hard to navigate this new world. And if we sort of expect ourselves to show up already perfect, the
Right.
battle's lost, right? It's like
Yeah.
show up
Well,
imperfectly. Show
yeah,
up
you're not
imperfect.
human if you're showing up
Yeah,
perfectly. Like, that's not a
correct.
human life. Like, it's not a
It's not
human experience.
But it's weird how we sort of expect that of ourselves. Oh, I have to have this, I have to be pulled together, or I have to be calm right now. Maybe not. Maybe you don't need to
Yeah.
be calm right now. And then just to be back to what you were saying before, earlier on, that we judge ourselves. Oh, I should be over this, or I should be dealing with this better. Just let
Mm.
go of that judgment if possible. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with this well, or I'm still grieving this. It's okay. Just
Mhm.
allow some compassion. It's so important. So important. But anyways, I'm grateful you brought that up, that we're collectively in a strange space right now.
I think that there's any number of directions I could go off
Yeah.
and run with that, but maybe I'll just kind of, yeah, try and keep a lid on it for today. But I think that what you're saying about showing up messy, showing up human, showing up just as we are, for me,
Yeah.
that's the true gift of my
Mm,
mindfulness practice, being able to acknowledge all of those things, or
yeah.
just as you said at the beginning, it's just being aware of what is actually happening
Mm,
without judgment, right? Like that's the
yeah.
hard part, right? We might know, like I know when I was really kind of going through the worst of my grief and trauma and all of the things that were happening, it's like I know I'm grieving, I know I'm upset, I know I'm hot, I'm angry, I'm all these different emotions, but I want to
Mm,
make it better. It's like you said. So how do I get through this? How do I fix it? How do I make
yeah.
it go away? Right? It's all of that resistance that makes it stay, that makes it stick.
Well,
It's learning to
because it
be
is
able to
painful.
allow it. Yeah. Yeah. So it's saying, okay, this is my experience, period. This is what's happening
Mm,
right now. I am
so true.
experiencing this. And
Mm,
cultivating that non-judgmental and that loving kindness, these different kinds of practices and
mm,
techniques that help us just soften up to
mm,
ourselves. I think for me,
yeah.
that compassion piece has become
Mm,
just monumental, front and center. I'm very grateful and appreciate it very much. And it's also kind of surprising and shocking that it wasn't there before. Does that
mm,
make sense? Because again, this is this idea of grieving past versions of myself. I always prided myself on being so self aware or reflective. I've kept a journal since I was in an elementary school and all of this stuff. And as I go on my path, it's just like, oh, like,
mm,
oh, like over and over and over again, opening up to how little I knew.
yeah.
Or, like it's just like, oh, right, never mind. Like, let me just sit with this and
Yeah.
let it come. Yeah.
Mm,
And be kind as I am going through
mm,
these processes and trying to hold my grief and my intense emotions and processing and everything with a
mm,
little loving
mm,
awareness, right? A little more compassion, a little less criticism, a little less judging, a little
mm.
less reactivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the grief support group that we've talked about, there's sort of three pillars. One is mindfulness, which again is being aware without judgment. And
Mhm.
one is ritual, which is little tiny routines, again, maybe once a year, thinking of the
Mhm.
person you lost, or once a day, taking a walk. It's very, varied. But the third one is community. And I just want to sort of note that how important it is to have a conversation like this or to hear a conversation like this, because grief can be lonely to begin with, but that sense of this is normal, right? And just hearing stories of other people sharing about their loss or grief can be really like a solve to that wound. This is what other people go through too. Having your own grief witnessed by other people, having you listen to my stories is just so important. And then sometimes people think, well, how do I find this community? How do I find my tribe? But it's like even just listening to this podcast, or I just want people to know it's like it's out there for you. You know what I mean? Like just being in community. And if it's okay for time, I want to share that in this ongoing grief support community, somebody shared a clip today of Anderson Cooper, who is a longtime journalist on CNN, but he's so vulnerable with his feelings and he cries a lot and his voice cracks a lot. And I really identify with his grief because his father died when he was young, but he sort of tried to control it until he was a lot older. And I really identified with that because when I was little, as I've mentioned, my brother died and I was just always crying, but I was always shamed for it.
Mm.
Like don't cry, or why are you crying? And I remember being a kid being like, why am I crying? Like, what?
I'm
I
crying.
just like, I'm like, what? And so I just grew up feeling really ashamed to have big emotions and trying to control myself. But again, what you resist persists. So I was just in this constant state of trying to resist and not show my emotions, but feeling so many emotions. And so it was just this very stressful tension of not feeling like I was allowed to cry or show my emotions. When I say I was shamed, it wasn't even a malicious shaming. It was just a communal, like, no more crying now, Gretchen, pull yourself together, or something at
Right,
school or something. I
right.
had really loving parents, but it was just sort of this sense of stop crying. And just,
Mm,
I always had,
do that.
yeah, again, and just I always had tears. I was always trying not to cry, and then but trying to control that, right? Trying to control that was so unhealthy for myself, so unhealthy. And so just allowing yourself to be like, oh, you know what, I need a good cry. And again, there's a time and space for that. I do think we have to acknowledge that maybe we can't control our emotions a lot of times, but just be at home or allow yourself to cry or whatever you need. It's just so important. But my point is, this woman who shared the story was so healing for me because I'm thinking about my childhood and how hard it was for me to cry. And so that sense of community to share our own sort of journeys of healing and when I say healing again, I use that not in the sense that now I'm not sad that my mom died. I'm always going to miss my mom. I'm always going to miss my mom, but I can be more aligned with how I miss her. I can honor my
Mhm.
grief with my grief. That's what I mean by healing. Because
Yeah.
again, you can't really fix a loss. It's always going to be with you. As you mentioned, you carry it with you. You carry it with you and you sort of integrate it and weave it into your life. But just that community element of hearing other stories, of sharing other stories is so valuable.
Yes, yes, and that is wonderful. I wanted to make sure to properly mention Lighthouse, and also the Evergreen program is the individual option if people maybe feel they're not ready to be in that kind of really open, really vulnerable space. You guys also have a self paced version called Evergreen. And then Lighthouse Circle is the community, the online 6 month grief support community that you run throughout the year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. So I will add all of those links in the show
Oh,
notes for
yeah.
sure.
Thank
When is your next cycle of Lighthouse going to begin?
It's going to begin in the spring, probably April. So usually we start it and then it's 6 months and then we take a couple months off. And as you
Mhm.
mentioned, the evergreen is really good if even just if the time doesn't align and you want
Mhm.
something that you can do on your own, or if you just prefer to do it by yourself, that's totally appropriate and fine. So either option, but I just do want people to know that they're not alone in their grief, that there's people like you talking about it. There's support groups. And then we also are constantly sharing resources. So even if you don't join our group, I share resources that I think are valuable. There's other
Yeah.
support groups out there. It's really just that intention of normalizing grief, allowing ourselves to grieve is so important. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we kind of wind up our conversation here, I was going to offer the rain practice as a kind of
Mhm.
takeaway.
I think rain is perfect. So, just as a short takeaway, I'll just do a 1 minute guiding of it, of just taking a moment to stop and just recognize where do I feel stuck or what strong emotion is coming up. So, R is recognize it. So, that could just be naming it: anger, rage, conflict, betrayal, abandonment. Again, those are heavy words, but, or just, I don't like that person or that person's word. You know, when something triggers you and you're like, why did that bother me? And I don't know why. Just that person said this. So just recognize this is the stuck place. And then A is allow. And then maybe just say, can I allow this? Can I be spacious with this right now? And you don't have to fix it. You don't have to make sense of it. So just spend a few seconds, 10, 20, 30 seconds, just allowing, okay, this is here, this is present. And then I is investigate. You sort of say, what's going on? What is this conflict or emotion trying to teach me? And if you want, you can even check in then with your body. Where am I holding this? Where do I feel tight, or where do I feel heat? Or where do I feel that tension or nausea? Just check in with your body. And what is that trying to teach me? And I want people to trust that they have a real inner wisdom. Maybe listening to this right now, be like, what are you talking about? But actually, if you really quiet your mind and sort of get down into your body, you might say, oh, yeah, this is what's really going on. That's why that person's words hurt me so badly. And then N is nurture, which is how can I be compassionate with myself right now? What do I need right now? So I actually don't really like this, but a lot of people put their hand on their heart. That's not something that works for me, but I know it works for a lot of people, just that physical touch. But like we mentioned before, like, oh, this is hard. This is heavy. Right?
Yeah.
Or we already went through some of those, but just it doesn't have to be so overly complicated. Just this is hard. Or you know what? I'm gonna call my friend. I need 5 minutes to talk. Or I'm going to journal, or I'm going to light a candle, or I'm going to put some lotion on my hands. You're not going to solve everything in that moment, but can I just nurture myself for this moment? Can I be compassionate with myself? So, yeah, I think that's a great takeaway. You could do it in a minute, you could do it in 20 minutes, but it's just a chance to recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gretchen. That's a beautiful takeaway and a beautiful practice. And as you mentioned earlier, people can find ample recordings, lots of different resources online if they want to investigate it further.
Mm-hmm.
I thank you so much for joining me again today. And I always have so much fun talking to you. I know we could always go on and on and on as long as we have, but I really do appreciate you spending some time with me today on my podcast.
Oh, likewise, Juanita. I love talking with you. And I hope people realize that, yeah, talking about loss, talking about grief doesn't have to be morbid. There's so much joy when we talk, and we've both had really big losses, but I always feel so much more connected to joy when I talk to you or when we talk about our losses. So just to remind people that there's a lot of beauty in talking about your losses with somebody and feeling heard, and how good that feels.
I think that's it. Feeling the comfort that comes with feeling truly heard and seen is so important, so vital. And so I thank you so much for all the work that you do, because you
Thank you.
provide those spaces. And for all of my listeners, thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any comments or questions or feedback, you can always reach out via my DMs on my social media accounts, or my email address is all available in the show notes. Until next time, thank you so much for watching today or listening today, and take care.